The corridor of Galactic Council Station Theta-9 stretched before them like a steel canyon. Corporal Daeho Kim walked 3 steps behind Ambassador Minji Park, his eyes scanning every shadow and doorway. 5 years of humanity joining the galactic community had taught him one thing: space was beautiful, but the things living in it were terrifying. Minji stopped at a junction where 2 hallways met. She checked her tablet and frowned. The Vrexian delegation moved the meeting to Conference Room 7. We need to go through the East Wing. Daeho nodded. He had met Vrexians before, massive reptilian beings who stood over 8 feet tall. With scales like armor plating and claws that could tear through steel. They were warriors, every single one of them. Their entire culture revolved around strength and dominance. The peace treaty negotiations between Earth and the Vrexian Empire had been tense from the start. They turned the corner and Daeho saw them immediately. 2 young Vrexians blocked the doorway to Conference Room 7. Cubs, he remembered the term. Even their children were enormous. These 2 stood at least 7 feet tall, their scales a lighter green than the adults, but their claws were just as sharp. They wore ceremonial armor and held plasma spears crossed over the doorway. The cubs saw them approaching and shifted their stance. Their spears remained crossed, their eyes yellow with vertical slits fixed on the humans with predatory focus. One of them hissed softly, a sound that made Daeho's spine tingle with ancient warnings. Minji slowed her pace. This is the right room. Why are they blocking it? Probably a show of force, Daeho said quietly. The general brought his offspring to prove Vrexian strength. Can we get past them? Daeho considered their options. He could request they move aside, citing diplomatic authority. He could call for station security. He could try to find another entrance. All of those options would take time and might be seen as weakness. The Vrexians respected directness. He stepped forward, moving ahead of Minji. The cubs tracked his movement, their bodies tensing. One of them growled low in its throat. Daeho had seen military working dogs do the same thing back on Earth. A warning. A threat. Daeho stopped 3 feet from them. He made no aggressive movements. He did not reach for his weapon. He simply stood there, relaxed, and looked at them calmly. Then he spoke in a normal tone, the way he might ask someone to pass the salt at dinner. Excuse me. The effect was immediate and startling. Both cubs straightened as if jolted by electricity. Their spears snapped upright in perfect unison. They stepped apart, creating a clear path to the door. One of them even reached out to press the door panel, opening it for them. Their heads were slightly bowed. Daeho blinked in surprise but did not show it. He nodded to them. Thank you. He gestured for Minji to go ahead. She walked through, her face carefully neutral. Daeho followed. As he passed between the cubs, he noticed they were trembling slightly. Their claws had retracted. Their tails, which had been lashing aggressively moments before, now hung still. The door closed behind them. Minji let out a breath she had been holding. What just happened? I have no idea, Daeho admitted. The conference room was large and circular with a round table at its center. General Thexmore sat on the far side, his massive frame making the reinforced chair look small. 2 adult Vrexian warriors stood behind him. Around the table sat representatives from 6 other species, all observing the proceedings. General Thexmore's eyes fixed on Daeho and Minji as they entered. His pupils narrowed to slits. You are late, Ambassador Park. My apologies, General, Minji said smoothly, taking her seat. We were delayed at the security checkpoint. Daeho moved to stand behind Minji's chair, the standard position for a security escort. He noticed the other species watching him. A Keltharian drone, its insectoid body covered in chitinous plates, had its compound eyes locked on him. A Torgath merchant, a being that looked like a walking fungus colony, had shifted away from him slightly. General Thexmore stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound. Before we continue these negotiations, I demand an explanation. Minji looked up at him calmly. An explanation of what, General? Your soldier. Thexmore pointed a clawed finger at Daeho. What technique did he use on my sons? The room went silent. All eyes turned to Daeho. Minji glanced back at Daeho, confused. I'm not sure what you mean. My sons guarded that door, Thexmore said, his voice rising. They are trained warriors. They do not move for anyone except their superiors in the military hierarchy. Yet your human walks up to them and they submit instantly. What pheromone did he release? What sonic frequency? What neural manipulation device does he carry? Deho felt multiple species now studying him with new interest. The Keltharian drone's antennae were twitching rapidly. The Torgath had shifted even further away. General Thexmore, Minji said carefully. Corporal Kim used no device or manipulation. He simply asked them to move aside. Impossible. Thexmore slammed his fist on the table. The metal dented. Vrexian warriors do not yield to polite requests. We yield only to superior force or higher rank. Your human demonstrated neither, yet my sons responded as if he were an Alpha Prime. Explain this. Deho spoke for the first time. Sir, I only said excuse me. They chose to move. Thexmore's head snapped toward him. For a long moment, the general stared at Deho. The human stared back, not aggressively, but not backing down either, just meeting his gaze calmly. Something flickered in Thexmore's eyes. Something that looked almost like recognition. Or fear. The general sat down slowly. This matter is not finished. I will investigate what trickery your species employs. Until then, these negotiations are suspended. He stood again and strode from the room, his warriors following. His sons entered from the hallway as he left, falling into step behind him. Deho noticed they kept glancing back at him as they departed. The other species began talking among themselves in various languages. Minji turned to Deho. We need to figure out what just happened. That could have gone very badly. It still might, Deho said quietly. He had seen the look in Thexmore's eyes. Pride wounded. Honor questioned. Those were dangerous things among warrior cultures. As they left the conference room, Deho noticed something else. The other species in the hallway moved aside as he passed. They did not make eye contact. They created space around him instinctively. A Torgath actually backed into a wall to avoid crossing his path. Deho had been trained to read body language. He recognized these signs: fear, deference, submission, but why? He was just a human soldier doing his job. He had no special abilities. He had simply been polite. That night, Minji called an emergency meeting with her team. Hyun Park, the xenoanthropologist, pulled up data files on his holographic display. Jiwon Choi, their linguist, reviewed recordings of the encounter. Captain Suho Lee, head of security, watched the footage with narrowed eyes. Play it again, Suho said. They watched for the 5th time. Deho approaching the cubs. Deho saying, excuse me. The cubs snapping to attention and moving aside instantly. There, Suho pointed. Look at their body language before he speaks. Aggressive, territorial. Look at it after. Submissive, deferential. That is not a response to words. That is a response to a perceived threat. But Deho did nothing threatening, Jiwon protested. Exactly, Hyun said slowly. He did nothing threatening. And somehow that was the most threatening thing he could have done. Hyun Park stood in front of the holographic display, his hands moving through data files that floated in the air like glowing sheets. Behind him, the observation window showed the vast darkness of space dotted with distant stars. He had been awake for 30 hours straight, searching through galactic databases for answers. I think I found something, he said to the empty room. His voice activated the communication system. Minji, you need to see this. 10 minutes later, Ambassador Minji Park entered with Jiwon Choi and Captain Suho Lee. Deho Kim stood outside the door, still on duty, despite Minji telling him to rest. The man was stubborn about his responsibilities. What did you find? Minji asked. Hyun pulled up a document written in 3 different alien languages. The translation software converted it to Korean. This is from the Galactic Historical Archive. It is a record from 12,000 years ago, before most current species achieved space travel. It describes a species called the Apex Tamers. Never heard of them, Suho said. Nobody has. They went extinct or disappeared or left this galaxy. But look at the description. Hyun highlighted a section. They were bipedal, stood between 5 and 6 feet tall, had bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes, and minimal natural weapons. They were persistence hunters who evolved complex social structures and domesticated other species through presence alone. Jiwon leaned closer. That sounds like humans. It gets better, Hyun continued. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. The Apex Tamers were the most feared species in the galaxy, not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they were apex predators who had evolved social cooperation to such a degree that they functioned as pack hunters across entire planets. The archive says that being near them triggered submission responses in other predator species. Minji sat down slowly. Are you suggesting that aliens think we are these Apex Tamers? I am suggesting, Hyun said carefully, that to predator species like the Rexians, humans register as something their instincts recognize. Something dangerous, something dominant. But we are not trying to dominate anyone, Jiwon protested. Daeho was just being polite. That is the problem, Hyun said. In galactic society, politeness does not exist the way we understand it. Every species operates on strict hierarchies. You show submission to those stronger than you. You show dominance to those weaker. There is no middle ground. There is no concept of being courteous to someone regardless of your relative strength. Suho crossed his arms. So when Daeho said excuse me to those cub, they interpreted it as a command from a superior. Hyun finished. A stronger predator allowing them to move aside rather than simply attacking them and taking the space by force. In their worldview, only an apex predator can afford to be that confident. Minji rubbed her temples. This is going to complicate everything. She was right. Over the next 3 weeks, incidents multiplied across the station. A human janitor named Minho Shin was cleaning a hallway when a group of Karthik's mercenaries approached. The Karthiks were insectoid, each one 7 feet of chitin and mandibles armed with plasma rifles. Minho looked up from his cleaning and said, "Pardon me, just finishing up here." The mercenaries stopped. All 6 of them moved to the sides of the hallway, creating a path down the middle. They stood still while Minho finished cleaning, then waited until he had packed up his equipment and left before continuing on their way. The entire encounter was captured on station security cameras. Captain Suho watched the footage with growing concern. He is a janitor. They are trained killers. Why did they defer to him? Same reason the cubs did, Hyun explained. Human social behavior registers as alpha predator behavior to their instincts. Another incident occurred in the station's recreation area. A human tourist family was visiting and their daughter, 8-year-old Yuna Han, saw a Vrexian war beast being walked by its handlers. The creature was massive, all teeth and muscle, bred for combat. Yuna walked right up to it. Her parents tried to stop her, but she was already speaking. "Excuse me, can I please pet your animal? He looks really soft." The Vrexian handlers stood frozen. Their war beast, trained to attack on command, lowered its head and allowed the small human child to pat its scales. It made a rumbling sound that might have been a purr. The handlers looked at each other in confusion and fear. Bora Nam, a journalist covering the human diplomatic mission, recorded the incident. Her article went viral across human networks and was picked up by several alien news services. The headline read, "Human Child Commands War Beast with Politeness." The alien response was immediate and divided. Some species became more interested in humanity. Others became more afraid. The Keltharian swarm, in particular, began submitting formal complaints to the Galactic Council about human psychological manipulation. Meanwhile, Hyun continued his research. He discovered that in galactic society, every interaction was about establishing dominance. When 2 aliens met, they sized each other up. The weaker one showed submission through body language. The stronger one accepted that submission. This happened in seconds, instinctively. Humans did not do this. Humans could be polite to anyone, regardless of whether they were stronger or weaker. This broke the fundamental rule of galactic social interaction. Worse, human calmness and confidence while being polite registered as extreme dominance displays. We are basically walking around telling every predator species that we are so much stronger than them that we do not even need to prove it, Hyun explained to Minji during another late-night meeting. But we are not saying that, Minji argued. Our bodies are saying it. Our behavior is saying it. Every time we make eye contact without looking away, every time we speak calmly in a tense situation, every time we say please or thank you to someone who could physically overpower us, we are demonstrating apex predator confidence. Jiwon pulled up linguistic data. It is in our language structure, too. We have words for please, thank you. Excuse me, sorry. Most galactic languages do not have these words. The closest translations are more like submit, acknowledge, yield, retreat. When we say please, they hear command. When we say thank you, they hear acceptance of submission. Captain Suho entered the room looking grim. We have a bigger problem. General Thexmore has issued a formal challenge to Corporal Kim. Everyone turned to him. What kind of challenge? Minji asked, though she already knew the answer. Ritual combat. Single combat in the arena. Thexmore says his honor has been insulted by human trickery. He says he will prove that Vrexians are the superior warriors. If Kim refuses, it will be seen as an admission of weakness and the treaty negotiations will collapse. Minji stood up. Daeho cannot fight a Vrexian general. He will be killed. If he refuses, humanity loses credibility across the entire galaxy, Suho said. We will be seen as cowards who use tricks and mind games but cannot back them up with real strength. This is insane, Jiwon said. This whole situation started because Daeho was polite. Now he has to fight to the death because of it? Hyun was scrolling through files again. Not to the death. Phyrexian ritual combat has rules. First to submit or first to be unable to continue loses. But yes, it is full contact combat. No weapons restrictions. No outside interference. Minji walked to the window and stared out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere. Barely visible even with the station's powerful sensors. 5 years ago, humanity had been alone. Now they were part of something bigger. But that came with complications nobody had anticipated. Where is Daeho now? She asked. Outside the door, Suho said, still on duty. I told him about the challenge. He said he accepts, and of course he did, Minji said quietly. Get him in here. Daeho entered, standing at attention. His face was calm, but Minji could see the tension in his shoulders. You do not have to do this, she said. Yes, ma'am, I do. Daeho replied. If I refuse, everyone back home loses. Every human trying to build relationships out here loses. I have been in bad situations before. I will figure it out. Thexmore is twice your size and has claws that can cut through metal, Suho pointed out. Yes, sir. I noticed. Daeho almost smiled. But I have been training since I was 6 years old. I know how to fight bigger opponents. And I have something he does not have. What is that? Minji asked. Daeho considered his words carefully. Back home, we have martial arts that teach you to use an opponent's strength against them. We have combat sports where smaller people beat bigger people regularly, but more than that, we have been practicing politeness and social interaction our entire lives. If that really does mess with their instincts, maybe I can use that. Hyun looked at him with new interest. You want to weaponize human social behavior? I want to survive, Daeho said simply. And if being calm and polite is what confuses them, then I will be very calm and very polite while I fight. The date was set. 1 week from now in the central arena, Corporal Daeho Kim would face General Thexmore in single combat. The entire galaxy would be watching. The arena occupied the largest open space on Station Theta 9, a circular chamber 300 feet across with seating that rose in tiers around the fighting floor. Normally it hosted athletic competitions and cultural demonstrations. Today it would host something much more violent. Daeho Kim stood in the preparation room wearing simple combat fatigues. No armor, no weapons, just his body and whatever skills he had learned in 28 years of life. Across the arena, in another preparation room, General Thexmore would be doing the same, except the general had natural armor, natural weapons, and 100 years of combat experience. Captain Suho Lee checked Daeho's vitals one more time. Heart rate was elevated but steady. Blood pressure normal. Breathing controlled. You can still back out, Suho said, though they both knew it was not true. No, sir, I cannot, Daeho replied. He rolled his shoulders, loosening muscles. He had spent the last week training, studying Vrexian anatomy, watching footage of their combat style. They were aggressive, powerful, relied on strength and natural weapons, but they telegraphed their moves. They fought like beings who had never needed to be subtle. Jiwon Choi entered carrying a datapad. I analyzed every recording we have of Vrexian combat. They always attack high first, going for the throat or head. They expect opponents to dodge or block. What they do not expect is someone moving into the attack. Good to know, Daeho said. He had learned similar principles in judo. When someone pushed, you pulled. When they pulled, you pushed. Use their force against them. Youngji Ko, the human medic, prepared her equipment. She did not speak, but her face showed what she was thinking. She was preparing for severe injuries, possibly fatal ones. Daeho appreciated that she was being realistic. Ambassador Minji Park entered last. She looked tired. The last week had been filled with diplomatic meetings, trying to prevent this fight or at least minimize its consequences. She had failed. The Galactic Council will observe but not interfere. Those are the rules. Once you step into that arena, you are on your own until someone submits or cannot continue. Understood, ma'am. Daeho, she said, using his first name for the first time. You do not have to win. You just have to survive. Show them humans can face their challenges without breaking. That will be enough, he nodded. But they both knew it would not be enough. If he lost too badly, if he showed too much fear, humanity would be marked as weak. Everything they had built in 5 years would crumble. The arena door opened. Sound rushed in. The noise of thousands of beings from dozens of species all waiting to see the fight. Deho walked out into the light. The arena floor was bare metal, slightly textured for grip. Around him, in rising tiers, thousands of eyes watched. He saw Vrexians, Keltharians, Torgaths, species he could not name. Some looked curious. Some looked hungry. Some looked afraid. Boranam was in the press section, her camera recording everything. This would be broadcast across human space and beyond. His family would see this. His old training instructors would see this. Everyone would see this. Across the arena, another door opened. General Thexmore emerged. The Vrexian was massive, 8.5 feet of muscle and scale. His claws gleamed under the arena lights, each one sharp enough to cut through bone. His eyes, yellow with black slits, locked onto Deho with predatory focus. The general wore traditional combat honors, symbols painted on his scales that marked his victories. They walked toward the center of the arena. An official, a member of some species Deho did not recognize, stood between them. The official spoke in Galactic Common, explaining the rules. Fight until submission or incapacitation. No killing blows if avoidable. Honor the traditions of combat. Deho barely listened. He was focused on his breathing, on staying calm. Fear was natural. Panic was deadly. He had been taught that in basic training, had it reinforced in special operations, had lived by it ever since. The official stepped back. Begin. Thexmore did not roar or beat his chest. He simply moved. Faster than something that large should be able to move. His right claw came in high, exactly as Jiwan had predicted, aimed at Deho's throat. Most opponents would have backed away or tried to block. Deho stepped forward and to the left inside the arc of the claw. His shoulder brushed against Thexmore's chest. He could smell the alien, something like ozone and copper. The claw passed over his shoulder, missing by inches. He did not try to strike back. Not yet. He simply moved away, creating distance. The crowd made a sound, surprise mixed with confusion. The general had attacked and the human had not even defended properly, just avoided. Thexmore turned, reassessing. His tail lashed behind him. He came in again, this time with a low sweep of his left claw. Deho jumped, letting the claw pass under his feet, and landed in a roll. He came up smoothly, hands open and relaxed. You cannot run forever, human. Thexmore snarled. I am not running, Deho said calmly. I am here. Something flickered in the general's eyes. The same thing that had appeared in the cub's eyes that first day. Uncertainty. They circled each other. Thexmore attacked 3 more times, each strike powerful enough to tear armor. Each time Deho evaded, never blocking, never meeting force with force. He was patient. Predators understood patience. The general was breathing harder now. Frustration showed in his movements. He lunged forward with both claws, trying to grab and crush. Deho dropped low, swept the general's leading leg, and rolled away. Thexmore stumbled but did not fall. The crowd was silent now. This was not the fight they expected. The human was not trying to hurt the Vrexian. He was just staying alive, staying calm, showing no fear. Fight me, Thexmore roared. Stop hiding! Deho stopped moving. He stood in the center of the arena, arms at his sides, and looked directly at the general. His heart was pounding, but his breathing was steady. He did what human soldiers had done for thousands of years when facing overwhelming force. He stood his ground. I do not want to fight you, Deho said clearly. But I will if I must, Thexmore charged. It was a full commitment, all his weight and strength behind it. Deho waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to his knees and to the side. The general's own momentum carried him past. Deho's arm hooked around one of the general's legs, using his body weight as a fulcrum. Thexmore went down hard, crashing into the metal floor. Before the general could recover, Deho was on his back. Not striking, not clawing. He wrapped his legs around the general's torso and his arms around the general's neck in a rear choke hold. Not a blood choke that would kill. A controlled restraint, the kind used by police officers to subdue without injury. Submit, Deho said quietly, directly into the general's ear. Please, I do not want to hurt you. Thexmore struggled. His strength was immense. He could have broken free from most beings. But Deho's position was perfect, his technique flawless. Every time the general moved, Deho adjusted, maintaining control. Minutes passed. The general's struggles grew weaker. We can stop this, Deho said, still calm, still controlled. You are a great warrior. You have nothing to prove. Let this end, please. Thexmore's body went still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the general's hand moved to tap the floor 3 times. The submission signal. Deho released immediately, rolling away and standing up. He extended his hand down to help the general stand. Thexmore stared at the hand for a moment, then took it. Deho pulled, helping the massive Vrexian to his feet. They stood facing each other. The arena was absolutely silent. You are stronger than you appear, Thexmore said. You are stronger than I am, Deho replied. But strength is not everything. The general nodded slowly. Then he did something that made the entire Vrexian section of the audience gasp. He bowed his head. A gesture of respect from a superior warrior to an acknowledged equal. Deho bowed back, the way he had been taught in martial arts classes as a child. A bow of respect, not submission. The arena erupted in noise. Some species cheered, some hissed or clicked or made sounds Deho could not identify. He walked back to his preparation room, his legs shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. His team was there, Minji and Suho and Jiwon and Youngji and Hyun. They did not say anything. They did not need to. Deho sat down heavily on a bench and let out a long breath. That was the most terrifying thing I have ever done, he admitted. You won, Minji said. No, Deho corrected. We both survived. That is different. Outside the preparation room, the galaxy was beginning to understand something new about humans. They had watched a human face overwhelming force with calmness and control. They had seen a human choose restraint when he could have tried for violence. They had witnessed something their cultures rarely valued, a warrior who fought not to dominate but to protect. The footage would spread across 1,000 worlds. Analysis would be conducted by military strategists and xenobiologists. Debates would rage about what it meant. But in that moment, in that room, Deho just wanted to rest. The video played on screens across 300 worlds. Deho Kim, small compared to the massive Vrexian, calmly evading attacks that would have killed him. The moment when he said please while holding the general in submission. The bow of respect between 2 warriors. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 3 billion times by various species. Bora Nam sat in her quarters, reading through the alien responses that flooded the galactic networks. Some were positive. Many were not. She had been a journalist long enough to know that fear often disguised itself as anger. Her inbox was full. Interview requests from major news services across the galaxy. A Keltharian hive mind wanted to discuss human psychological warfare techniques. A Torgath Research Institute wanted to study human social evolution. 3 different military academies wanted Deho to lecture on combat theory. The message that caught her attention was from an independent researcher named Vector, a member of the scholarly Quillian species. I have been studying your species since you joined Galactic Society. I believe I understand what is happening and it terrifies me. We need to talk. Bora arranged a secure communication channel. Vector appeared on her screen, a being covered in what looked like crystalline feathers that shifted colors as they spoke. Thank you for responding, Ms. Nam. I needed to speak with a human directly. What did you want to discuss? Bora asked. Your species is a persistence predator, correct? You evolved to hunt by tracking prey over long distances until they collapsed from exhaustion. That is what anthropologists believe, yes. And you evolved complex social groups to coordinate these hunts. Language, cooperation, the ability to communicate abstract ideas. Yes, that is basic human evolution. Vector's feathers turned a deep blue, which Bora had learned indicated concern. Do you understand how terrifying that is to other species? Most predators in the galaxy evolved to ambush or to use raw strength. They hunt alone or in small packs. You evolved to hunt as a species, to cooperate across hundreds or thousands of individuals, to plan and communicate, and never stop pursuing prey. Bora had never thought about it that way. But we do not hunt anymore. We have agriculture, technology. But the behavior remains, Vector said. When your Corporal Kim stood in that arena, he demonstrated persistence predator behavior. He did not try to overpower his opponent. He waited, evaded, tired him out, then controlled him. That is exactly how a persistence predator hunts. He was just trying to survive. To you, yes. To every predator species watching, he was demonstrating alpha predator technique. And the way he spoke, calm and polite while in mortal danger? That is the behavior of something so confident in its dominance that it does not need to prove anything. It is the most alpha behavior possible. Bora felt a chill. We are just being ourselves. We are not trying to intimidate anyone. I know, Vector said sadly. That is what makes it so effective. If you were trying to dominate, other species could understand and resist. But you genuinely do not see yourselves as threatening. You are polite, cooperative, friendly, yet every instinct in predator species screams that you are apex predators. The disconnect is psychologically devastating for them. After the call ended, Bora sat in silence for a long time. Then she started writing. Her article would be titled, "The Predators Who Chose Peace Understanding Humanity's Place in the Galaxy." Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Minji Park was experiencing the consequences of the fight. She had expected hostility or fear. Instead, she found respect. Species that had ignored human proposals before now wanted meetings. Trade agreements that had stalled for months were suddenly moving forward, but not everyone was pleased. The Keltharian swarm had filed an official complaint, claiming humanity was using biological warfare through social manipulation. Their representative, a drone designated K-377, made its position clear during a council session. Humans represent a threat to galactic stability. K-377 buzzed through its translator. They manipulate social hierarchies. They cause instinctive submission responses. They domesticate other species without those species realizing it is happening. Minji stood to respond. The Keltharian representative mistakes natural human behavior for manipulation. We do not control anyone. We simply interact according to our evolved social norms, which happen to trigger submission responses in warrior species. K-377 countered. How convenient. Humans evolved to domesticate animals on their world. Dogs, horses, cattle, birds. You found creatures and changed them to serve your purposes. Now you do the same with intelligent species. We formed partnerships with those animals, Minji said. They chose to be with us. We gave them food, shelter, protection. In return, they gave us companionship and help. That is cooperation, not domination. You shaped them to your will. You bred them for desired traits. You made them dependent on you. K-377's wings buzzed aggressively. Your own history shows a species that cannot resist domesticating everything around them. Now you are in space, surrounded by other species. How long before you try to domesticate us? The chamber erupted in debate. Some species agreed with the Keltharian position. Others argued that humans had shown no aggressive intentions. The session ended without resolution, but the damage was done. Suspicion had been planted. Back on Station Theta 9, life continued. But everything had changed. Humans found that aliens treated them differently now, some with respect, some with fear, some with resentment. Seojun, a human teacher who ran cultural exchange programs, noticed it with his students. Alien children who had been friendly before now approached him cautiously. Their parents picked them up quickly, avoiding conversation. Hana Lim, an engineer working on the station's power systems, found that her alien co-workers avoided being alone with her. They were polite but distant. When she asked why, a Torgath colleague finally admitted, "We saw the fight. We saw what your species can do. We are being careful." "I am an engineer, not a soldier," Hana protested. "But you are human," the Torgath replied. "That is enough." Even positive interactions carried strange undercurrents. Taeyang Jung, a human doctor, treated a Vrexian who had been injured in an accident. He was gentle, careful, explaining everything he was doing. The Vrexian submitted to treatment without question, but Taeyang could feel the fear underneath. The patient was not trusting him. The patient was obeying him. General Thexmore surprisingly became an advocate for humanity. He gave interviews explaining that humans were warriors worthy of respect, that their calmness was strength, not weakness. But even his support carried implications. He spoke of humans the way one might speak of a dangerous but honorable opponent, someone to be respected from a safe distance. Hyun Park continued his research, now with more data. He discovered that every predator species that had encountered humans showed the same instinctive responses. Submission displays, avoidance behavior, and most telling, a tendency to obey human requests even when those requests were phrased as polite suggestions. He presented his findings to Minji and her team. "We are not mind-controlling them, but we might as well be. Human social behavior exploits a vulnerability in predator psychology. When we say please or excuse me, We are essentially saying we are strong enough to not need aggression. That triggers a dominance recognition response. So what do we do? Minji asked. Stop being polite? That would be seen as even more aggressive, Hyun said. If we suddenly start being rude or dismissive, it would register as active dominance displays instead of passive ones. We would go from being the calm apex predator to being the actively threatening apex predator. Ji-won threw up her hands. So we cannot be polite and we cannot be rude. What can we do? We can be ourselves, Captain Suho said quietly. We can keep being polite, keep being calm, and prove through our actions that we are not a threat. Eventually, they will learn that human behavior does not mean what their instincts tell them it means. That could take generations, Minji said. Yes, Suho agreed. But what is the alternative? While humans debated their next steps, the Keltharian swarm was taking action. In secret facilities, they prepared a plan to prove humanity's dangerous nature. If humans would not show their true predatory selves willingly, the swarm would force them to reveal it. Daeho Kim, now known across the galaxy as the Polite Warrior, tried to return to normal duty. But nothing was normal anymore. When he walked through corridors, aliens moved aside. When he spoke, they listened with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. He was not trying to intimidate anyone. He was just doing his job. One night he found General Thexmore waiting outside his quarters. The massive Rexian stood there silently until Daeho approached. General, Daeho said. Can I help you? I came to warn you, Thexmore said. The Keltharians are planning something. I do not know what, but they fear your species. Fear makes beings dangerous. We are not trying to be dangerous. I know, the general said. That is why I respect your people. You have the power to dominate, but you choose not to. That is true strength. But not everyone will see it that way. Some will see a threat that must be eliminated before it is too late. What should we do? Be ready, Thexmore said. And when the time comes, show them again what humanity truly is. Not predators seeking prey, not conquerors seeking subjects, but beings who choose peace even when they could choose war. The general left. Daeho stood alone in the empty corridor, feeling the weight of something he never asked for. His species had become something to other species, a symbol or a threat or a mystery, all because they had been taught to say please and thank you. 6 months after the arena fight, the attack came without warning. Station Epsilon 12, a civilian research outpost near the Galactic Rim, went dark. When rescue teams arrived, they found devastation. 37 researchers dead, equipment destroyed, and evidence pointing to human military weapons. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Security footage showed figures in human combat armor systematically destroying the station. Weapon signatures matched human plasma rifles. Even DNA evidence pointed to human attackers. The case seemed undeniable. Ambassador Minji Park stood before the council, her face pale but composed. Earth categorically denies involvement in this attack. Our military accounts for every soldier, every weapon. None were near that sector. The evidence speaks otherwise, K-377, the Keltharian representative buzzed. Human weapons, human armor, human DNA. What more proof do you need? Proof that cannot be fabricated, Minji replied. This evidence is too perfect, too convenient. Someone is framing us. How human, K-377 said. To blame others for your predatory nature. You have been playing the peaceful explorer, but this shows your true face. You are apex predators, and predators eventually hunt. The council voted. Earth was to be placed under sanctions pending investigation. Human ships were restricted to human space. Diplomatic relations were suspended with most species. Only the Vrexians and a handful of others maintained contact. Back on Station Theta 9, Minji met with her team in an emergency session. Boranam had flown in from Earth. Hyun Park had compiled all available data on the attack. Jiwon Choi analyzed the linguistic patterns in the communications from the attackers. Captain Suho Lee and Corporal Daeho Kim reviewed tactical aspects. Someone is trying to isolate us, Suho said. The question is who and why? The Keltharians, Bora said. They have been pushing the humans as predators narrative since the beginning. This gives them proof. But why? Minji asked. What do they gain? Hyun pulled up a galactic map. The Keltharian swarm controls 7 systems. But they want to expand. 3 systems stand in their way, including human territory. If they can get us expelled from galactic society, they can claim our space for protection of other species. That is genocide. Jiwon said quietly. That is war, Suho corrected. And we need proof to stop it. Daeho had been silent, studying the attack footage. Now he spoke. The attackers moved wrong. Everyone turned to him. What do you mean? Minji asked. Human soldiers are trained in specific movement patterns. Economy of motion, tactical positioning, coordinated sweeps. These attackers moved like they were pretending to be human soldiers. Small things were off. The way they held weapons, the formation spacing. It looks right to aliens who have never worked with human military, but any human soldier would see the differences. That is not enough proof, Hyun said. No, Daeho agreed. But it tells us they are not human, which means somewhere there is a place where fake human soldiers were trained. If we find that place, we find our proof. Bora pulled up her investigation notes. I traced the attack communication signals. They bounced through 17 relay stations, but the original source was somewhere in Keltharian space. Not proof, but a direction. We need to get into Keltharian space, Suho said. Find the training facility. Get evidence. That is impossible, Minji said. They would never allow human ships in their territory now. Then we do not use a ship, Daeho said. We go in quiet. Small team, covert insertion. The plan was dangerous and probably illegal under galactic law, but doing nothing meant humanity would be isolated, possibly destroyed. Minji approved it. 3 days later, Daeho led a team consisting of himself, Soyeon Baek, a human intelligence specialist, and Wonho An, a communications expert. They used a civilian cargo vessel to reach the Keltarian border, then transferred to a small stealth shuttle. The insertion went smoothly. Keltharian space was vast, easy to hide in if you knew how. Soyeon's intelligence contacts had pinpointed a facility on a remote moon that showed unusual activity. Military training, but not for Keltharian drones. They landed 5 kilometers from the facility and moved in on foot. The moon's atmosphere was thin but breathable. They wore minimal gear, nothing that would identify them as military. If caught, they would be labeled spies and killed. The facility was exactly what they expected. A training ground with obstacle courses, firing ranges, and barracks. Through binoculars, Daeho watched beings that looked almost human running drills. But their movements were wrong, just like in the attack footage. Actors, Soyeon said quietly. They recruited species that looked similar to humans and trained them to mimic us. We need to get inside, Wonho said. Get their training data, communication logs, anything that proves this is a Keltharian operation. Getting inside would be the dangerous part. The facility had guards, sensors, and probably defense systems. A direct approach would fail. So Daeho did what had worked before. He walked up to the front gate. 2 Keltharian warrior drones stood guard, larger than standard drones armed with plasma weapons. Daeho approached alone, unarmed, calm. He stopped 10 feet from them and spoke clearly. Excuse me, I need to speak with your facility commander, please. The drones froze. Their weapons did not lower, but they did not fire either. Daeho could see the confusion in their body language. Every instinct told them this was an apex predator. But he was asking politely, requesting permission. How did an apex predator behave this way? One drone spoke into a communicator. Response came quickly. Commander says you are to be detained and questioned. I understand, Daeho said calmly. May I walk to your detention area, or would you prefer to escort me? The simple politeness, the lack of fear, the confidence, it all registered as alpha predator behavior. The drones moved aside almost unconsciously. Follow us, one said, its voice uncertain. They led him inside. Daeho memorized every detail. Guard positions, camera locations, security protocols. When they reached a holding cell, he went inside without resistance. The drones locked the door and moved away, clearly uncomfortable. While guards focused on Daeho, Soyeon and Wonho infiltrated the facility from another angle. Security was lighter than expected. Most personnel had moved to deal with the human prisoner. Within 20 minutes, Wonho had accessed their computer systems. The data was all there. Training protocols for impersonating humans, communication logs showing Keltharian High Command approval, financial records showing payment to mercenaries, even footage of the attack rehearsals. Everything needed to prove the frame-up. Got it, Wonho said. Downloading now, an alarm sounded. They had been detected. Guards converged on their position. Soyeon and Wonho ran, dodging plasma fire, heading back toward Daeho's location. They reached the holding cells just as Keltharian reinforcements arrived from the other direction. They were trapped. Deho saw them through the cell door's small window. He also saw what was coming. 20 armed drones, nowhere to run. His team was going to die unless he did something. He stood up and spoke loudly, calmly, projecting his voice. "Excuse me. I need you to let me out. Now please." The guards hesitated. That hesitation was fatal to their mission. Deho kept speaking, kept making eye contact with each guard he could see. "We are not here to hurt anyone. We just need to leave. Please move aside and let us go. No one needs to get hurt." The senior drone commander arrived, a massive warrior, scarred and experienced. It looked at Deho through the cell door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the commander spoke. "Why do you not fear us, human?" "Because fear does not help," Deho said simply. "I have a job to do. My friends have a job to do. You have a job to do. But maybe we can all do our jobs without anyone dying today. Please open the door." The commander's mandibles clicked together, a sign of stress in Keltharians. Every instinct screamed danger. This human should be afraid, should be angry, should be aggressive, but he was calm, polite, asking permission while clearly confident he would get what he wanted. The commander reached out and unlocked the cell door. "Thank you," Deho said. He walked out, collected his team, and headed for the exit. Guards parted to let them through. Not because they wanted to, because something in their genetic memory recognized an apex predator and told them to submit. They reached their shuttle and launched before the Keltharian. High Command could override the facility commander's decision. As they cleared the atmosphere, Wanho transmitted all the evidence to multiple secure locations, including the Galactic Council, major news networks, and Earth government. The response was immediate. Within hours, the Keltharian frame-up was exposed across the galaxy. The swarm faced sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Species that had turned against humanity now apologized. The treaty negotiations resumed, but the incident had consequences. The Galactic Council proposed new regulations, a charter of mutual respect and courtesy based on human social concepts, not because they wanted to adopt human behavior, but because they recognized that politeness could be a tool for peace instead of dominance. Ambassador Minji Park stood before the Council 3 months later, as the charter was ratified. "We do not ask other species to be like us," she said. "We ask only that you judge us by our actions, not by your instincts. We are predators who chose to be civilized. That choice defines us." The charter passed with overwhelming support. Back on Station Theta 9, Deho Ri. And across the galaxy, one species at a time, beings learned to respond to "excuse me" not with instinctive submission, but with understanding and respect. The predator cubs no longer guarded doors against humans. They guarded doors with them. Partners in a universe learning that the strongest do not need to prove it and the most dangerous do not need to show it. They simply say please, and the galaxy moves aside not because it fears them, but because it trusts them.